Chapter 2. Where is Dad? Looking back on those days, it's hard not to feel a sense of nostalgia for a world that was both simpler and more complex than the one that we know now. Back then, we didn't have the constant barrage of technology that bombards us every day. No smartphones, no social media, no instant gratification at our fingertips. And yet, in a way, we had something that is all too rare in today's world. Time. We had the time to play, to explore, to make friends, and to truly connect with the world around us. There was a sense of freedom and possibility that permeated everything we did, as if anything were possible if we just had the imagination and will to make it happen. Whether we were climbing trees in the park, inventing new games to play with our friends, or simply lounging in the sun, we were never in a rush, never beholden to the clock. And yet, for all this simplicity, there was a complexity to our worlds that is too often overlooked. We had our own struggles and challenges to face, our own obstacles to overcome, but because we had the time to really be present in our lives and in our relationships, we were able to face these challenges with a sense of grace and resilience that is all too rare these days. The innocence of childhood can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it shields us from the harsh realities of the world. On the other hand, when reality comes knocking, it can be a devastating blow. When I think back to my childhood, I'm reminded of a time when the world was a simpler and more magical place. Back then, I had a friend who lived right next door to me, and we were inseparable. We would spend hours playing together, exploring the world around us and inventing new games and adventures to embark on. One of our favourite pastimes was playing football in the park. We would kick the ball back and forth, laughing and joking as we tried to outmaneuver each other. It was a simple pleasure, but one that brought us so much joy and excitement. Another favourite activity of ours was riding our bikes around the neighbourhood. We would pedal as fast as we could down the quiet streets, the wind whipping through our hair and the sun warming our faces. We'd stop and explore whenever something caught our eye, a patch of wildflowers, a new tree to climb, or a stream to wade in. But perhaps the best thing about those days was the sense of safety and security that we felt. The world seemed like a small, cosy place filled with friendly faces and familiar sights. We could run and play and explore to our heart's content, knowing that we were safe and loved. As a child, I couldn't shake off the emptiness that came from not having my father around. Even though he was always on the move, shuttling between our home in Baghdad and our small shops in Basra, it felt like he was never really there. And then, one day, he didn't come back. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but there was no sign of my father. I couldn't help but feel anxious and scared, wondering where he was and if he would ever return. I would ask my family, but all they could tell me was that he had travelled abroad on business and that he would come back soon with lots of toys for me. I believed them. I didn't know any better. I kept playing. Oh, the innocence of childhood. The world can be so kind one moment and then so cruel the next. I remember the days of playing with my cousin, who was a few years older than me, and my neighbour friend. Oh, how we would lose ourselves in our games for hours on end. My cousin was from another aunt, and he lived a half hour away. Sometimes they would come to visit us, and those were the best days. He would bring new toys, shiny and untouched by the world, and we would play with them until they were worn out. One day, I remember bragging to my cousin that my father was going to bring me even more toys than he had brought. But the words that came out of his mouth shattered my world. "No, your father is dead," he said, innocently. I don't remember much of what happened next, but my older brother told me what had occurred. I ran inside the house and asked my mother, What does he mean my father is dead? Silence filled the room and I started to sob. My brother, who was 11 years older than me, ran to me and hugged me, and the rest of my family followed. They tried to comfort me, but I couldn't be consoled. I was devastated. It turned out that my father had a heart attack and was taken to the hospital, but he never left. The world had snatched him away from us, leaving me to grow up without him.
If you enjoy hard copies and would like to read this book, the link is provided in the description section below. It is also available as audiobook on Amazon.